So if we look at classical mythology, we can see that typically the shield itself is typically identified with the abductor. So there is this relationship between the Ophanim, represented in the Greek mysteries as the Apui, a type of abductor, Oplon, a shield, Pleon, which is a boat, and we can see that the shield, therefore, is this device of the angelic Ophanim. Now, looking at this, the idea of shield, which is combined with the serpent, we can see that that the thigh is where where covenants are sworn upon him within the ancient biblical traditions and also within the classical tradition. So the serpent biting the thigh, it has this connotation of making a covenant, but it also it has the exact opposite meaning, because it also connotes destruction and destroying one covenant and creating a new covenant. The bite of the seraphim, or the bite of the poisonous serpent of the serpent, is equated symbolically with ejaculation, the spitting cobra. So we see here, if we look at the biblical verse in Judges chapter 15 verse 8, it says, "And he smote them hip and thigh with great slaughter." So to smite the hip or thigh relates to a slaughter, but a slaughter which is ostensibly related within the classical traditions with a new covenant and the establishment of a new angelic covenant, which is established with the angel or the seraphim, the dragon. So mythologically employed as a royal emblem, the shield of the gods historically is propounded to originate from the aegis of Zeus. So again, when we start looking at the classical symbolism of the shield, there is a close cognate with Zeus's shield, which is described as the aegis, and is complemented in the tradition of Numa, which is the Latin word, which is a deity, but originates from the Latin etymology numen, a deity. Now, in this early account, a shield is said to have fallen from heaven. As we said before, the shield is an esoteric device of the boat. So this was an esoteric, this was a boat or a ship, a mariner's ship, in the context which we're highlighting, an angel or an alien vessel which fell from heaven. And it is said they had such mystical powers that the object was universally feared. According to the ancient legend, it was said that the nymph Egeria predicted that if preserved, the possessor of the article would be the dominant people of the earth. So in other words, this vessel was so powerful that if anybody who had this vessel, that they would immediately be able to control the earth. Now the protagonist, Egeria, whom is described as a type of nymph, in cryptic parlance is a nubagina. So as we said before, there is this correspondence between nymph, the Greek word for a bride, and the nubagina, which is to marry, nubus, which is a cloud. Literally the nubagina, which is an offspring of a cloud, and is understood in the tradition to be a type of divinity. So in other words, she is represented as a type of angelic being. And again, this is reiterated within the name herself, within Egeria's name, because we can see that the term Egeria is from the root egero, to carry out or to discharge. Otherwise, agero, to bring, utter, or convey. One who conveys is angelos, a messenger, an angel. So we can see that there is this consistency with angelos, which in the Greek, which is a messenger or an angel. And as we see here, there is this correspondence between the boat and the shield, which again I've highlighted in the slide. Now, comparison between the related word groups suggests that both the Romans and the Greeks interpreted the nymph as a class of angelic being. In this context, this would be a fallen being, which originates from heaven. Now, the description nymph, as I said before, originates from the Greek word nymph, which is a bride, but it does have this connotation of this alien hybrid. In a modern context, the story of the fallen shield, in double talk of vessel, as we said before, the terminology is equated etymologically, the shield and the vessel, is remarkably similar to the urban myth regarding the exploitation of backdated alien technology for the purpose of commercial and military exploitation. So again, the ancients, just as we do today, had this conception or this idea that if they could exploit this remarkable technology of this angelic vessel, because the shield is a representation of the vessel, then they would be able to be the dominant species on the planet, the dominant people of the earth. And this is carried out also within the modern idea of downed UFOs and exploiting and backdating this technology. So this is an ancient and a very old idea. Now, if we refer to the slide, we can see then that there is this relationship between the shield and serpent. As I said before, ostensibly the shield within Greek symbolism is cross-referenced to the Ophanim, the circular ones. The Ophanim are cognate of Aphra, viper. And as we see here also, we're seeing that the seraph is bound around the man's thigh. So there is this connotation of this double-edged symbolism between this individual being destroyed but then being reborn, or that a new covenant is established through the covenant of the thigh. So as we can see, the shield itself is concave and is replicated in heraldry and is adopted by the aristocracy to symbolize the heavenly bloodline, termed in a literal sense as kingship. So the shield in heraldry represents a ship, and the vessel originates from heaven. Ostensibly, it describes the circular ones. The circular ones are these angelic mariners, Malak an angel, Malak a sailor, Sabaoth a naval crew, the angelic host, Serpent a crew member of a naval vessel. So in the ancient world, the shield is an emblem of the Ophanim, the circular ones. A foreign and naval agency, this progeny is archived with the boat, a signifier of the angelic sailor, and is documented in the Bible as the Sabaoth, the crew member of a naval vessel, and its related entourage, the seraphim. As I said before, the seraphim themselves are identified with Safina, a boat or a ship. And it's useful here just to quickly go over the etymologies so that we can link this into the lecture. But we can see that the seraphim, the flaming ones, the burning ones, are another word for Sapan, a sailor, and Safina, a ship. As we said before, Sabaoth, the angelic host, is a crew of a naval vessel. Serpent, a crew. Teva, an ark or a vessel. Malak, an angel. Malak, a sailor. Now, if we look at the slide here, we can see that the angelic vessel is a type of chariot, but the chariot here is drawn as a type of sailing vessel, and the front of the chariot is represented as a keel of a ship. The wheel is adjoined to the ship to refer to the Ophanim, the wheeled ones, the ones who belong to the wheels, the circular ones. So as we can see, the shield, as we can see, the shield is a symbol of a deity vessel. Now, the association of the angelic soldier, a type of abductor, is important and is conjoined in the Greek mysteries with the symbol of the shield. So in other words, the angels themselves are termed as abductors, but they are identified with a vessel, a circular vessel which can be represented or symbolized with the shield. Now, the circular motif is not by chance, but encodes deep narratives that are relevant for the study of UFOs. In Greek literature, there are numerous myths of shields falling from heaven, and establishes the hypothesis that angelic ships in classical sources are conceived as round or circular, an assertion which is evident philologically in the comparison Opalon, a shield, and Pleon, a ship or a boat. Once again, these devices are related to the seraph or reptile, symmetrical in the Greek, to Arpui, an abductor, a cognate of Erpeton, a reptile. And if we look at this slide here, we see this comparison between the shield, which is adorned on the side of the vessel, and Opalon, a shield, and Pleon, a boat. Now, making reference to the idea, we can see also within the Greek etymology there is this close connection between a deity and between the shield of the deity, which, as we said before, is a type of vessel. So in Greek, for example, there is Theos, a god, but Theos himself is identified with Thurios, a shield. And this shield, as I said before, is an angelic vessel, and once again is closely equated with Theoros, a watcher. As I said before, the watcher is a term for Drakos, a dragon. Drakos meaning eye, Drakon is a watcher or a sentinel, and is picked up in the Greek etymology, Thurion, a beast. The connotation is of a type of dragon. So we've seen this relationship and between, if you like, between a deity and a god, and its extension within the Greek mysteries of a fallen angel. So I just want to draw correspondence then between Theos, a god, and Thurios, which is a type of shield. But we can see that the deities themselves are closely equated with Theros, a dragon, Theros, a watcher, which connotes a dragon. But the relationship is also found with the fallen seraphim in the Greek, the Harpui, the abductors, and their correspondence between Pleon, which is a ship or a vessel, and Opalon, which is a type of shield. As I said before, the correspondence is with Opalite, a soldier. The soldier here in the context outlined would be the angelic host. So, as articulated in this, as I articulated in the second lecture, the metaphor of a falling shield is an ambilocution of a flying ship and is used in classical and Essene commentaries to describe the angelic host, a subtext of the dragon, the abductor, or a watcher. A common metaphor, the second term used in the Hermetical Mysteries for a guard, conceptualized as a royal emblem of a deity, is Thurios, a shield, a noun that sounds remarkably similar to the title Theos, a god. As I said before, the shield is a type of vessel. In this respect, is identified with Theos, a god, Theros, a watcher, and is a cognomen that discloses Theoros, a watcher. Significantly, the wordplay Theos, god, and Thurios, a shield, is repeated in the Paranomasia, Arpi and Oplon, a shield, and once again infers a connection between the dragon, a winged beast, and its counterpart, a deity. So, if we look at the slide here, we can see also that there is this correspondence in the symbolism in particular between this circular vessel with the horse, which is identified, as I said, with the dragon. But within the Greek tradition, we can see that hippo, a horse, is a wordplay on hopalon, a shield. The shield being a device of pleon, which is a type of boat, but is equated with the noble bloodline, as in hypasis, aristocracy. But the term also has a double meaning, it's polymorphic and means a charioteer. So in other words, we're seeing a close correspondence in the Greek language between a ship of God, a vessel of God, which is represented as a shield, and also the naval vessel, which come together as the chariot, and thus the chariot is often represented as a boat or a ship, typically identified with the circular motif of the Ophanim. If we look at the traditions of King Ixion and his imprisonment on Zeus's wheel, now traditionally mythologists would argue that this is a depiction of the solar myth of the sun, which is setting and which is sinking into the earth, and the imprisonment of the sun god. And at this Gnostic level, this interpretation is obviously applied to the tradition, but covertly within the inner mysteries and within the secret traditions themselves, these circular wheels refer to the shining ones. So the solar mascot itself is used to denote the shining ones, which are referential to the serpents or the circular ones. And we see this correspondence with the angels, and thus King Ixion himself is imprisoned on this circular vessel, which is this angelic vessel, and is reiterated with the comparison with the angels themselves. To conclude, I want to look at the shield then as this idea of the dragon, which variously is a personification of the seraphim, shaft, which is to watch or to see, Sapan, a sailor, Safina, a ship. These are the angelic sailors. But also is closely accorded with the phenomenon of both the angelic host and the jinn also. As I said before, the jinn themselves correspond with the seraphim. The seraphim from the etymology Serapha, fire. The jinn themselves are born from the smokeless fire. Now, if we look at the Arabic etymology, we're seeing the same comparisons with the Greek. So therefore, we can look and we see that the Arabic word for shield, darak, a shield, is a pun or a wordplay on drak or drakon, variations on the Greek on the word dragon. We can see that Migan or Mijan, a shield, is closely correspondent with the jinn, and we see obviously that Hamar, a shield, is another variation on Hammon, which is the Hebrew word for the angelic host. So in other words, we're seeing this close correspondence between the dragon, the angel and the jinn, and all of these entities themselves are identified with the shield, which personifies this angelic vessel. Now, as I mentioned before, we see that there is this correspondence in Greek between Thurios, a shield, Theos, a god, and Thurion, which is a beast. The connotation is of Theoros, a watcher, which is of the dragon. In Hebrew, seraphim, and shaft, to see. The seraphim denotes the seraph, a shining serpent. But the shield also is found with the fallen angels within the Greek, the harpi, those who abduct, correlated with both Erpeton, a reptile, and Opalon, a shield. So the reptile itself abducts, but the correspondence is with a shield. And as I said before, the shield is this angelic vessel. And this is why within classical depictions of the vessel or the boat or the chariot, that the etymology of chariot and vessel are closely tied in together within the symbolism. Now, In conclusion, the overall analogies between the angel and UFO phenomena are quite extraordinary. And so I've made these points and I've kept on repeating them, but essentially we can note that the angels themselves, they are crew members of vessels. They are a type of vessel. We talk about a spaceship, a starship. Also with the angels themselves are sailors. Sophina, a ship; Seraphim, Malak, an angel; Malak, a sailor; Sabaoth, Sevet, a crew member. So we're seeing that there is this that this whole phenomenon is very ancient, but that there is this consistency, there is this linear tradition which runs throughout the modern idiom of alien abduction. And as I have shown, both within the biblical passages and also within the classical traditions of the Arpui, the abductors, and the nymph and the nympholeptos, which is to abduct, or even the Lamia and Lambano, which is to take or to steal, we're seeing that there is this alignment with the traditions of the alien. And as I said before, in the ancient Aramaic, Zari is both an angel or an alien. The terms are synonymous. So we're seeing that there is this analogy between the angel and the UFO phenomenon. It's quite extraordinary, and it is highlighted throughout religious discourse. And I want to try and I want to finish then with a quote from the Songs of the Holocaust of the Sabbath. Now, this is a supplication that describes the appearance of a vessel. Now, interestingly, this device is compared to a throne. And this is interesting because in the biblical representation, God's throne is often identified with a chariot. So therefore, in the Bible, sometimes it's referred to the throne chariot. Now, the throne chariot, the chariot connotes the boat, and therefore God is seen as a navigator, as a cosmic sailor, as the Lord of the host. In the Hebrew, Yahweh Sabaoth, he is the commander of the naval retinue, of the naval host. The connotation, though, is of the heavenly host, of the host which originates from heaven. So we can see then that the term throne once again appears in ecclesiastical symbolism and is listed with the Ophanim as a type of angel. So as I said before, in ecclesiastical symbolism, the Ophanim are registered as a type of angel. But when we begin to deconstruct the etymology, the Ophanim themselves in the original Semitic specifies a type of naval vessel which is deemed as being circular or wheel-like. And we will see that the correspondence is with a flaming or spinning vessel, which I will show in the last lecture. Now, in biblical law, the throne of God, at least in its original context, frequently describes a helmsman or a watcher, so one who is navigating a vessel. And these are nautical metaphors of the angels that hover variously in ships or chariots. The scribe describes this phenomenon, and he writes of the Ophanim. He writes, and this description fits in with the last lecture in which we will deconstruct the Ophanim, the circular ones, and we will show that the Ophanim are in fact the same phenomenon as the UFO. But if we read this description, we can see that there are obvious correspondences. So, for example, the scribe writes, the cherubim, as we said, the cherubim typically is identified with the Ophanim. The Ophanim is identified with Aphra, serpent. So there is this correspondence between the cherubim and the serpents, which are depicted with the Ophanim. And the cherubim bless the image of the throne chariot. The throne chariot in this respect is an angelic vessel above the firmament, and they praise the majesty of the luminous firmament beneath his seat of glory. When the wheels advance, the terminology here is the Ophanim, angels of holiness come and go. About them, the appearance of rivulets of fire in the likeness of gleaming brass. Now, the Arabic word nahas, brass, is a pun on nakash, a serpent. So here we're seeing a signifier of the serpent. So the angelic vessels themselves are deemed as being shining, but is cross-referential with the seraphim or the shining ones. Otherwise, the Elohim, the shining ones, are the watchers, the lofty ones. In the likeness of the gleaming brass and the work of radiance in many-coloured glory, marvellous pigments clearly mingled. So this phenomenon is both bright, but there are many lights, there are many different colours and shining lights. The spirits of the living gods move perpetually with the glory of marvellous chariots. So once again, God himself is correlated with a vessel. As we said before, there was this correspondence between Theos, God, and Thurios, a shield. And the passage continues. It says, when they ascend marvellously, and when they settle, they stand still. So again, we're seeing this idea that this phenomenon itself, it flies within heaven, but it can hover, it can change its altitude. And there is this correspondence, when we begin to break down the passage between these vehicles which are bright, which are radiant, and between this tradition of the ufology, in particular when we take into context the idea that the angels themselves are figured within the classical tradition as abductors. Thank you very much.